Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Real Deal, where we come at you with the truth that the lamestream media won't tell you, or they'll tell you little bits and pieces, and that's all they want you to know. They don't want you to research stuff either because, that takes a long time and it'll prove that they lie and are controlled by powerful corporations that are trying to brainwash everybody, and it's never, ever been easier than today. So I'm going to talk to you about ICE. That's one of the main current events going around in the country right now, the US of A. You got all these people out there that they don't like ice. But I'm like, well, in the summertime you like ice. It keeps your drinks cool. I mean, you put it in with your fruit punch and stuff. It keeps things better. In the wintertime, it forms on the lakes. I see the little kids out there ice skating and playing hockey and stuff. That's cool, man. What's wrong with ice? And when I say that, they get mad at me. Just kind of like when they were all going off on the No Kings and I pulled up in my car and I asked them, what do you got against Elvis? What do you got against Martin Luther King? I guess they just don't see the humor in that. Or actually, they're probably too stupid to get it. So, ICE is going around the country, doing their job, removing illegal immigrants. Okay? That's the key word, illegal immigrants. But people will call them immigrants or aliens. Undocumented aliens, what people try to say, but that means that they don't have papers and they are illegal. And the key word there is illegal. Now, what happens if I drive my car illegally down the road on the wrong side? I'm going to get pulled over and check to see how drunk and high I am. What happens if I go rob a bank? Well, that's illegal. So I get in trouble for it, correct? Correct. Now, this is nothing new. It's been going on for a long time. They wrote laws about this in the 20s, and it was after World War I, and they wrote these laws and passed them. And a lot of that had to do with the fact they were worried about communists coming over here and doing bad stuff because of what happened during World War I. People started to realize, hey, not everybody likes us. Not everybody gets along with us. Some of these people want to blow us up. Some of these people want to kill us. So let's make this to where you got to come in with paperwork. And they did. I believe it was 1922. Took effect in 24 and then in 26. And it's been on the rules ever since. It's a rule you have to come here with paperwork. Now, many people didn't and still snuck into the country. Many people would end up like at Ellis Island, certain groups of people like the Jews, because there was xenophobia, racism still today, but they wouldn't let them in, even though everything was documented. They didn't let the Italians in. They didn't really like the Irish because they had a reputation for being drunk and fighting all the time. And a lot of times you would see that in a lot of stores and stuff back then. Irish need not apply. There's a lot of hatred against some of these groups. And with the Jewish people, that's where they came up with a certain really rude word, because I don't use the word. I'm not going to say the word. But because they couldn't write in English, so they would mark it with a circle instead of an X. All these other people couldn't write in English. They'd mark things with an X. Now, like the Italians, a lot of them snuck in here. A lot of them. From Sicily, from Italy, obviously. And that's where the phrase WAP came up with, because they'd catch these guys without papers. And it was usually Italians, and they'd kick them out of the country. And, people are upset about this today. A few years ago, though, this stuff's always been going on. They didn't seem to care. I think a lot of that might possibly have to do with who's in office. Huh. What do you guys think? I wonder if that has to do with anything. You know what I'm saying? I'm being sarcastic, people. Of course it does. Now, here's the key word. You come to this country, you have to have paperwork. We make it not easy, but it's not overly complicated. You can file things and come into this country. You get your work visa. You get, and you got to pay for that. and you got to stay on the good side of the law. And eventually you become a U.S. citizen. I've seen people get their citizenship papers in the mail and stuff. They cry. They're so excited. They're so happy. They're so proud. They love it. They love it. And I think that's great because they're proud to be here. Not everybody hates America. Sure, we got our problems, but what country doesn't? Where are you going to go, right? So here's the deal. Everybody's upset because of all this stuff going on with ICE. Now, granted, I will say the 2 shootings never should have happened. That's sad. But don't be stupid, people. Don't be stupid. If I see the cops out doing something, I'm going to sit in my house or on the porch and be like, what's going on over there? I've seen it a lot. I've seen it a lot growing up, man. See the cops at the neighbors. You're looking outside, man. You hear gunshots. You're not going outside. Or you see the cops all gathered around. I'm not going to walk down there and say, what are you doing to this guy's house? Heck no. Because they got the right to arrest me. They got a right to throw me on the ground because I'm interfering with their enforcement rules. So I stay away. I actually, if somebody was to come up, the police or ICE was to go grab one of my neighbors, and I know they're here legally, I'd probably go out there and say something like, hey, man, but I'd step away from him and say, hey, man, no, he's legal, bro. Show him your paperwork, Pedro, that kind of thing. But I'm not going to get in their way, and those people shouldn't have either, and it's sad that they died, but they screwed around and they found out. You don't do that. Let these guys do their job. So everybody's upset all of a sudden about these deportations in America, right? Let me tell you how it would go down in other countries. You got countries that make it strict. You can't get into them. Qatar, North Korea, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. Those countries are some of the hardest to get into, man. They don't play around. They don't make it easy for you. They don't want you in their country because they can't control you. Now, here's what happens. All right. We get these people getting rounded up here. What do? Okay. You're here illegally. You have to leave. Okay. We're going to put you in detention. Then we're going to send you back. We pay for that, Our tax dollars are paying for all that. They're paying for that. I mean, we spend billions of dollars a year to deport these people. And then they come back. They get it deported again. And the reason they're getting deported is they are here illegally. Now, let's say I'm going to Canada. I got to have an enhanced license that I have to pay for to go there. Or I need a passport. Let's say I don't have one and somehow I sneak in there and I get a job and I'm hanging out up there. Not sure how that's all going to happen. And they catch me. They're going to lock me up and then they're going to send me back to America. And they're going to put me on a list that I'm never allowed in Canada again. And that's how most of these countries around the world are. You will face detention. You will get heavy fines. You'll get removed from the country. It varies by nation, but there's some of them, they'll imprison you for a while. And some of them will sit there and they'll hold you thinking maybe they can swap for something. They'll be like, hey, Trump, we'll release this guy if you give us our terrorists back, these 5 terrorists. He's going to be like, screw you, I don't need them. I don't blame him. What are you doing there to begin with? Why are you there illegally? So, I mean, they ban you for life. You're banned for life, and you get caught again, they will put you in prison and not let you out. That's your fault for being there. Sometimes you can go to the embassy. Good luck with that, because they'll sit there and want to know why you're there. There are some countries where they will physically punish you. I believe it was Cambodia a few years back. Somebody was there illegally and got caught, and they caned him in public. They beat you. And it's not just a little tap on the wrist. They beat you. And this happens. So why is everybody upset with these illegals? Why are they so upset that this is happening? They say ICE is doing this. ICE is committing crime. ICE is committing fraud. These guys are nobodies and stuff. Now, granted, I don't think a lot of these guys are getting a lot of training like they should. But here's the deal. If you want to go in there and be an ICE, you have to be a citizen. So you got to have citizenships. Citizenship. There we go. Got it. You got to have a background check. Got to do a drug test. You got to take a medical exam. So you're getting a physical. And you need a bachelor's degree or equal experience in the workplace like that. So we're talking about a 4-year degree, or you have to be doing something law enforcement, military, something like that for 4 years of your life to get in there. Everybody's freaking out about ICE. I keep saying that, but it's true. Now, back in the day, there were 32,000 ICE workers in America. 32,000. Now, there's only 22,000. So, but everybody's blaming Trump for all this. Why are you blaming Trump? Because this is actually stuff getting done? Let me tell you about some of these former presidents that we've had that have done worse, that nobody ever protested. Weird, because I remember it. Trust me, I grew up in an area that was immigration area. I'll get to that in a minute. But this is what I saw. And this is the truth, people. You know me. I tell the truth. We had a president, Bill Clinton. That guy's a puppet. That guy, recently, did you hear how he got subpoenaed to go to court? Him and his wife to talk about the Epstein files. And it was a federal subpoena. He didn't show up. He blew it off. Both of them did. And they were like, you better show up, Bill. We'll give you a week. Now, you know what happens if I get a subpoena to go to like district court in my city and I don't show up? I'm going to jail. These people are above the law, man. They're above the law and they're nothing but puppets. And he holds the record as the American president as far as deportations go. He deported in his 8 years 12.3 million people. Everybody gets down on Trump. Trump's not even close. And Clinton hired more, back then they were INS, Immigration Naturalization Services. He hired more people back then. They were kicking them out left and right. And at that time, 93% of the people he kicked out were returns, meaning you kicked them out and they came back. Then you kicked them out and they came back, and you get a lot of that stuff. So yeah, 11.4 million people were returns. Now, he passed in 96 the Act of Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigration Responsibilities Act, the IIRIRA Act. And that was on him. That was his people. That was Democrats. Those were his people that voted that in. 12 million people. And yet I never saw one protest about it back then. Why? Well, maybe they didn't know what was going on. They didn't have social media back then. Actually, social media was happening in his second term. Well, no. You know why? Because it was Bill Clinton. Because that's the problem with most people. They're idiots. They're morons. They're idiots. I'll tell it like it is, man. Most of them are. And they stand up for only certain people, certain political parties. That's how it is. Bill Clinton, he passed the FMLA Act. Good act. I liked it. Bill Clinton did a lot of horrible things, man. A lot of horrible things. And I'm not just talking to the women that he sexually assaulted. Paid him off with our money, man. But he did a lot of bad things. He didn't help this country at all. Now, here comes Barack Obama a few years later because people were upset. George W. Bush was deporting people. After 9/11, they found a bunch of illegal Muslims in here and they kicked them out. There were tons of them in the Dearborn, Michigan area. And then they started investigating after 9/11 and found that these people were funneling money to terrorists, running their stores and stuff. Many of them were here illegally. So they kicked them out. George W. Bush, how dare he do that? Now here comes Barack Obama. Obama kicked his butt in deportation. Tongue got twisted. In deportations. He kicked out 2.4 million people in his time. Now, most of those raids he had, they were silent raids. They weren't just going to somebody's home, knocking on the door, saying, hey, you're here illegally. That's pretty much what's going on with ICE right now in America. They're going after the people they know are here illegally. They're not standing on the street corner and seeing a Chinese guy going, oh, let's go grab that guy. Hey, there's a Mexican. Let's grab here. He's not here legally. No, they're going up to the people. Now, Obama's people went into silent raids. They went into a factory. There were 680 people illegal there. Shut the business down. That business pretty much went under because of that. And there's a lot of companies today that hire illegals because it's cheaper. I've seen it. I've seen huge corporations that got a lot of money. They're not paying them that much. I see a lot of tree services, a lot of, you know, nature services where they cut down the trees and do yard work and stuff, which is a gross stereotype for the Mexicans. But they hire them, and then sometimes they find out a lot of them are illegal. And the companies should be punished for that. I believe that the people, yes, you have to go home and do this the correct way, but the companies should be punished too. But anyway, he had all these people. They were coming in silent raids. They just show up and raid a whole place. Now, let's say they grabbed 50 people. Maybe one or two were illegal. But the other ones, they had to sit in jail and stuff till they could prove it, even if they had ID on them. The silent raids were awful. Many people died in custody while waiting to get deported. Now, the media tells you it was medical conditions. Bull crap. It was horrible conditions. I've seen the camps where they put them into. It was horrible. They didn't feed them. There was crap, no electricity. You want to go to the bathroom? There's a bucket over there. It wasn't good. But one thing I didn't see was any protest. Didn't see it. Didn't hear anything about it. I mean, you might hear something from people just talking about it, but you didn't see protesters out there on the signs, on the side of the road with their little handmade signs and fabricated signs from these companies, man. So the thing is, the reason they got mad at Bush, he was a Republican. Like you all know, I don't belong to a political party. I can think for myself. But most of these people are party line people. And they belong to a political party. And they support only their political party because they believe they're always right no matter what. I had a girl one time go off on Thomas Jefferson, and I was talking about all the bad things he did. And she's sticking up for him. And I said, Thomas Jefferson, come here right to your face and talk about all the slaves that he raped and had sex with, and you still wouldn't believe him. And she told me, you're right. And I'm like, dang, man, that's messed up. That's how stupid many of these people are. It's ridiculous, too, man. A lot of people they're just going after Trump. That's all because Trump's doing it. Like I said, there's 10,000 less ICE people than there were a couple years ago. It's ridiculous. But they're going after him. I had a friend of mine tell me, and he put it all over Facebook and everything. Of course, people, you can't debate with him on this because you're a horrible racist if you do. He said the only reason Trump is going after Minnesota because there's only 130,000 illegal immigrants up there. Texas has a couple million. Of course, that's going to happen, right, being next to Mexico. And then you got California, same thing. They come up through Tijuana, that area. And California's got a couple million of them. And he says, well, Trump's just going after Minnesota because he lost that state 3 times. That's why he's doing all this. Now, the amount of ICE workers in Minnesota aren't even half of what's in Texas and California. Those guys are doing their job, rounding out safely and peacefully, saying, here you go. You're going back to here, there, or everywhere. I tried to explain to him that Trump lost the state of California 3 times when he was, when he ran for election. He lost it 3 times, and he can't stand Gavin Newsom. I don't like Gavin Newsom. That guy's that guy doesn't, oh man, don't even get me started on, he has messed that state up so bad. Just a horrible person, but he thinks he's doing good. Let's combat homelessness. How? By making laws where you can't sleep in the streets. So I try to explain to him, it's like, well, why is he not going after California like that? Why are we only hear about Minnesota? Well, that's because he's got all these ICE workers. And I'm like, you can find this stuff out. Well, no, they're lying. It's like, why are they lying? Why is it that when you go look at a government page now, they're lying, but 2 or 3 years ago, you look at Biden's record of raising the deficit, and Obama, who he tripled our deficit, I'm gonna cut the deficit in half. Me and Michael. Shoot, man, He rolled our deficit up more than anybody else. Him and his wife, Michelle. But this guy just doesn't want to believe that because it's true. It's true. They don't want to believe the truth. They sit there and they just don't like Trump. They just don't like Republicans. That's fine. You don't have to. But you know what? You got to look out there and see the truth of what's really going on. What's going on in Minnesota? Why are those people rebelling so much? Because they're being told to. They're being paid to. They're paying people to go out there and protest. The governor's rebelling. Man, he stands behind it in his super little mansion out there and he's telling people what to do. They're throwing money around. They talk to people and people admit they're getting paid. That's why everything's going to hell in Minnesota. Minnesota. That's why they're doing that. It's ridiculous, man. ICE isn't kicking in doors and stuff, and I hear this all the time. Little city I know of where I work in, they were like, somebody put the story out that, they put a rule out there now that ICE can't go into the schools and do this and that. Well, ICE hasn't even been in that community because it's 99% white community. There's no immigrants there, and if there were, well, the average house costs $400,000. Actually, it's $463,000. The average apartment's about $2,000. They're not going to be living there, people. They're going to be living somewhere like a big city where there's diversity because they don't want to stand out. And in the bigger cities, like, the Detroit area and stuff, it's a lot cheaper. You can afford to live there a little bit. But they passed that. They said they had an incident. It got investigated, and they found out they lied about it. How are you going to lie about that? Why are you going to lie about that? They talked about down the road from where I work, about a half hour, there was a school, and they said, they were going up the school buses and doing this and hassling the kids and stuff. And then it came out because security cameras, and everybody's got a phone now, none of that happened. Security cameras didn't have that. They saw an ICE truck drive by, slowed down, the bus was pulled over, the lights weren't on. So, of course, they slowed down. They don't know what's going on with the kids. That's nice of them. But, hey, they said, well, this happened. No, it didn't. Then they backtracked on it. They always backtrack. It's ridiculous, man. And this is nothing new. It's been going on forever, man. So let me tell you about when I was growing up. I lived out in a city in Northern California. At the time, there was probably 55,000 people there, right? The economy wasn't that great. Times were tough. Jobs didn't pay a lot. And after the Loma Prieta quake in '89, so, the bridge going down to the neighborhood I live got torn down in the quake. So we had to walk along the levee to get home, which is one way. And where I lived was, the barrio. I ain't going to lie about it. It's the barrio. Now, basically what that is, Webster's will define it as a low-income area with mainly Latin American people. We called it the Mexican ghetto because that's what it was. And police were down there. It was a drug neighborhood. They were always selling coke and heroin, coca and chiva. They were always selling that. They didn't have weed. They didn't have mota. That was usually the white people that had that. Weren't a lot of white people that lived in that neighborhood. It was probably 90% black, 90% Mexican, 9% black, and me. Seriously, there were hardly any white people there. And I'd walk home, and it was a drug neighborhood. So when you saw a white guy down there, you knew he was buying drugs. Plain and simple. That's what it was always about. I got hassled always walking home from work or something, coming home from the store. And the cops would always come up and hassle me. And I'd always tell them, I live here, man. I'd show them my ID and just keep walking. One time I went to my friend's house. It was a double building. It was an apartment building, and you had a building 1 and building 2. I couldn't remember which building he lived in. I had the number right, lived on the first floor, but I couldn't remember if it was building 1 or building 2. So, of course, it's nighttime. Drug neighborhood, of course, like I said. So I walked from building 1 to building 2 because the first one didn't answer. And then I saw the light come on building 1. I was like, oh, okay, that's him because building 2, no one answers. So I go to walk back over there and the cop pulls up. Gives me a hard time. He's like, what are you doing? And I gave him I gave him the fake room number and stuff, and my friend's name. I told him his name was Nico, and not even close, man. But anyway, and then he says he knows him. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever, man. I just made that up because I ain't ratting on nobody. But he's like, well, what are you doing here? And I'm like, visiting my friend. No, no. What are you doing here? No white people come down here. And I was like, and he was a white cop, Irish cop. And I was like, I do. I live here. He's like, no white people live in the flats. I'm like, I do. Went to pull out my ID. He pulled his gun on me. Put that gun right in my face. And I'm like, dude, I'm showing you my ID. He said, no white people live in the flats. I'll never forget this. So I gave him my ID, put the gun down. And, he looks at it and he goes, you do live down here. I said, I told you. Why would I lie? He's like, why do you live down here? No white people live down here. I said, I do. I live here because it's affordable. Well, don't the Mexicans hassle you? I'm like, no, they don't hassle me. Well, they're pretty racist and stuff. No, they're not. They don't hassle you unless you're a bad person doing bad things. I'll never forget that because it made me mad because there was no reason for that. He was being prejudiced. I wasn't doing anything wrong. He wouldn't have done that to most of the other white people down there if he saw them. Now, I would walk down to the Mercado, the grocery store down. It was about a block and a half from my house where I lived. And actually, it was an apartment. And I would walk down there. And every now and then you'd see a van pull up. And it was INS. That's what they were called back then. And you'd see guys jump out. And they were scouting these guys. You'd always see these undercovers down there. They'd be down there buying Coke and whatever and going back and setting these guys up, saying, that's him. They'd talk to him in Spanish and stuff. Or they'd send Mexicans in there because a lot of cops, Mexican, a lot of Mexican INS. And I got a friend. His brother's INS. Well, ICE. His brother's ICE, Border Patrol agent down in Texas. And he's Mexican. And so they would sit there and all of a sudden you'd see him pull up and start grabbing people. They knew who they were grabbing. And you'd hear the word, "Immigrants." And you'd see most of the Mexicans would just stand there watching because they were here legally. You'd see them pull the illegals off the street, and all the Mexicans down there would get mad. And they'd get mad and start shaking their head. And they're like, they'd call them names because they were stupid. Not the INS, but the people. Because they say, I'm here legally. I got to pay for everything. They can do it too. They have the same means and access that I do. So why don't they do it? The Mexican people didn't like that. Then they would sit there and say they make us look bad. A couple guys like that make us all look bad. And they're right. They're right. Just like when my friend says something and he's like, I'm a proud Democrat, blah, blah, blah. I hate Trump. Okay, well, you're making all Democrats look bad then. That's what you're doing because that's how people judge. They're going to group you. And that's what people would do back then. They would judge and say, oh, they need to get rid of all the Mexicans. No. It was their land before ours. It was the Native Americans' land before them. And who knows whose land it was before the so-called Native Americans were here. Everybody came from somewhere, people. So that's my story about growing up in the barrio. I'd see this all the time. I never had to run. Every now and then a gunshot would go off, because somebody tried to run and they'd stop. They'd hear that shot and they'd stop. And the funny thing was they'd be deported and you'd see these guys. And about 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, maybe a month later, they were back. Now, what they would do back then is they'd sell their drugs and they'd send all the money, the Western Union, every day to Mexico. You'd see them downtown. Western Union was busy downtown at the bank, man. So the money's worth a lot more down there. So when they did get deported, they had money waiting for them if the family hadn't spent it all. So, but they'd come back because, it was easy money selling those bags and stuff like that. That's what we have today, people. And you have a lot of people that are here legally that go through the paperwork. I talk to everybody and they get mad because they have to jump through hoops to get them here, to get their kids here, things like that. They're grown kids. And it's like, get them a job and everything. And they spend a lot of money on that. And I've had family come here. They came here legally. And eventually they got a green card, got the citizenship. By the way, the green card's not green. Not sure why they call it that. But they got their citizenship, people. And that's a good thing. They had to pay a ton of money for it. I do believe they should make it a little easier for immigration here as far as getting your green card, legal citizenship. But if they're throwing somebody out for doing something illegal, and a lot of these people are criminals, got a criminal past, I don't have a problem with that. Remember when when Castro emptied his prisons and sent everybody up here? He emptied his prisons out and sent all the prisoners up here. So everybody coming here had a criminal record. So they got here and they locked them up. Where are you going to send them? Back to Cuba? We don't have relations with Cuba. Not good relations. They ended up in prison. We had to pay for that. Castro knew what he was doing. He freed up all that space in his prisons. He knew what he was doing. He played the game. He knew what he was doing. Some of those people became productive members of society. Some of them had snuck in and stuff. But, some of them would get a break. That's what we need to do is help others. But they have to help themselves. The system is a little broke. It is a little corrupt. But you can go through the system and you can come to this country legally. Stop believing all the lies you hear, people. Stop believing that ICE is rounding up people. ICE is killing all these people. ICE is beating these people. I saw the one guy got hurt. He'll never see again, and he's got brain damage. I'm like, I'm sorry, dude. You shouldn't have been there doing what you were doing, and you had brain damage before you got hurt. Plain and simple, dude. So now you can go and talk to Joe Biden. You'll be the only one that can understand him, and he'll understand you because you both have brain damage. So people, don't believe all these lies and stuff. All this Minnesota stuff, it's set up. It's set up because there's more ICE agents in a lot of countries. Even Florida has a lot. And, there's a lot of states that they're dealing with it. They're like, yeah, come on in, do your job. Got no problem. This is nothing different than that's going on for years. They're just trying to make it sound like these guys are Nazis. They're trying to portray it in a bad way because they don't like the person in charge. Plain and simple. I've already shown you the truth, proved to you the truth. By the way, when I was living out west in Cali, Clinton was president then. So, he was president for most of those years. So they were rounding people up left and right. No problem, man. And I never once saw a protest. I never saw anybody get scared or cry or, sit there and get in their faces. Everybody would just stand there. A lot of people like, oh my God, and stand there. Where I'd be like, oh man, that's a bummer. Well, do your thing. And I'd wait for them to get out of the way before I'd go to the store or go down to the amusement park or somewhere, wherever I was headed. Happened all the time, man. We were used to it. So anyway, people, keep it real. Keep it real. Keep your faith. Everything's okay. Don't listen to the lamestream media. You want to learn stuff? Listen to people like me. Because I'll tell you the truth. Because I'm the real deal. Peace.